You and you alone are the only person can shift your spotlight. The world doesn't do it. You have to do it. And that is the most freeing, most liberating thing to know. Totally up to me. But then that's the bad news. It's totally up to you. You can't blame anybody else. And so the double-edged sword of real liberation, it's like it really is up to you.
If you've ever felt pulled between who you think you should be and who you know you are going to enjoy today's episode. I sit down with my friend Amy Wong, a brilliant former mathematician turned leadership coach and communication strategist, whose entire life pivoted the moment she stopped trying to figure everything out and started allowing herself to feel it out. We talked about the identity crisis that cracked her open, how intuition guided her into a completely different version of herself, and the surprisingly simple shift that can transform your relationships, your leadership, and honestly, your sanity, moving the spotlight off yourself and onto service. Amy and I dive into why we get addicted to being right, how we give our power away without realizing it, the real reason communication breaks down on teams and in marriages and all relationships, and how to reclaim alignment when your nervous system is screaming to win. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Amy. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm thrilled. I've been looking forward to this conversation, Abby. We're going to have so much fun.
I know. So just for listeners, Amy and I met when we were both speaking at an event together, and I reached out to her beforehand just so we could have a conversation, and your energy was just off the charts. I was just like, oh my God, I love this woman and I need her in my life. So tell us about your journey, because you started as a mathematician and now you help leaders with trust and communication and working in organizations. There's a lot of overlap between what you and I both do. And I think we use different language, but intuition has a lot to do with what you're bringing to the table as well. But tell the listeners your story.
Totally. Well, and I would say that intuition is the reason there's an Amy 2.0. There was a me pre-major event in my life. And then through this massive epiphany and transformation, there is now this version of me. The through lines can thread through all aspects, but essentially in the past, from birth until about 29 years old, I was super driven, type A, obsessive compulsive, hyperachiever. I mean, to the nth degree. I was my career. I was rising the ranks in tech. I worked at Sun Microsystems. I was there for a decade. I mean, I was the type of person that, I started interning while I was at UC Berkeley. I started interning 17, turning 18, like young. So I started interning in a tech company so that by the time that I graduated, I'd already been there for a couple of years and just my career took off. So I'm just so driven. Well, all was well, however, riddled with anxiety and the stress. It's just the typical life of a professional. You think like, oh, it's just, you deal with a lot of stress and sleepless nights and insomnia and all. And I just thought that's how life went. And I thought all of us that worked, that were driven, had a perpetual sense of emptiness that we're filling with more work and more work and more work. And that's just how it goes. And you work harder and you make more and you climb the ladder. And that's what fulfillment is about. But then after I had my first child, who is now 17, who you've had the pleasure of getting to meet, which is awesome. Yeah, it just, my entire world came crashing down. And I had to recognize I thought I knew who I was. I didn't know who I was. And becoming a mother was a catalyst to waking up, recognizing that I wasn't living all parts of me. And then through this massive epiphany, completely catapulted into who I really am. And so, yes, it is true that in the work that I do today, again, intuition plays a big part in being able to thrive in teams and in businesses and honestly in humanity. And I would say it was intuition that led me to recognize that there was a purpose here. I'm meant to live, and now is the time to discover it.
Yeah, it's that deeper knowing. And I love that you use the word waking up, because of course I talk about the awake advantage and sophisticated sleepwalking. And I really think it is about waking up to ourselves. So when that happened, like you had the baby, and what did you learn? What did you wake up to? Like, who is the you that you found?
So, the technical term is called identity paralysis, but really what happened was, I have this child now that's weeks old, now a month old, and this growing love that I've never felt. And by the way, the locus of my life now just totally shifted from centering around me to around this thing. And it's so involuntary. Like I didn't make that shift. Life makes that shift. And now the focus of life is around this being, and it's profound. I don't have words for this, but as this is happening, you recognize, wow, I'm not all that important. This is important. And now that I've loved this being that I'm holding so much, now I'm like, okay, now I go back to work. Maternity leave is going to be over. And that's where things started to fall apart, because the thinking is, well, shoot, if I'm going to give my child over to some other person to care for him, well, I better be doing it for a darn good reason. And so I look over at my job and it's like, well, is this my calling? No, it's not. Like, I do care about what I do, but I'm not put on earth to do it. It's not my only social outlet. Like I had to run through my own set of like I had to come up with a whole set of principles for me to answer to, like, can I say yes to any of this? And if I can't, then I really can't go back. And I couldn't go back. And I thought, well, if I can't go back, and I am my job, because that's what I'd been working hard all my life for. If I can't go back, well, then who am I? And so I was just at lunch with a colleague yesterday. We were talking about this, and the metaphor that came to mind was it's like this. It's like, imagine if you're either a deeply spiritual or a deeply religious person, and you've got very strong convictions about how life works. And then all of a sudden the aliens come down and say, hey, haha, guess what? You're in a simulation. And without a shadow of a doubt, prove that you're in a simulation. Like, can you imagine like that? I mean, it's beyond an existential crisis. That's what it felt like. Like, you think you're one person, and then you're revealed a whole part of you that exposes that, wow, I'm not this. Well, then if I'm not this, then who am I? And so in this dark night of the soul, there was internal anguish that was being masked by the external joy of being a new mother and this lovely new family and this new life. So I was really struggling with this internal anguish and external joy, and just, again, this identity paralysis. And the pivotal moment was when I decided not to go back, and I drove down to the office to tell my incredible manager, who just, I still think the world of, that I wasn't going to come back. Like, that was a very, very pivotal moment. I come home, and now I'm changing from my work clothes into my mommy clothes, and I'm in my closet. And it was this defining moment where it was the lowest of my lows, because I couldn't make sense of anything. And so I don't know what compelled me to do this, Abby, but I threw my arms to the side. I look up to the ceiling. I'm in my closet, and I say, I give up. You show me the way. And I don't even know who I was talking to, because I'm not religious like that. But I was just, you show me the way. And the only thing I can think of is that it was genuine surrender that I allowed. I gave myself permission for, involuntarily. Surrender. And in that moment of surrender, the moment I said it, it felt like I got hit by lightning. And the wordless, soundless voice that filled my awareness said, Amy, you're going about life all wrong. It's not about figuring it out. It's about feeling it out. In this wisdom, this epiphany that truly I heard, but I didn't hear, but I heard. It injected in every cell of my body, and I shifted. It was a quantum shift. I shifted, because the wisdom wasn't just the brilliance of those words itself. What came in this was, hold on, wait a minute, take a step back. Do you see that everything you want in life, everything you think you want, it's not for the money, it's not for the title, it's not for the idea, it's not for the concept, it's not for the thing. You want it because you think it's going to make you feel a certain way. So really what you want is a feeling, and you use the thing to get you there. But nobody teaches us that. In life, we say, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to be? We don't ask, what do you want to feel? And so because we're not trained to ask that, we get good at chasing the thing, blindly assuming it's going to lead us to some desired feeling state that we're not even clear about ourselves. So in all this wisdom, that was the pivotal moment. And from that, like, being injected with this insight, I vowed and made this firm, complete commitment to myself. From this point forward, as I stand in my closet with this insight, from this point forward, I will only follow inspiration. What feels life-giving, what feels energizing versus what sounds like a good idea. Because if I'm figuring it out, it sounds like a good idea. That is chasing the thing that's likely not mapping to what I ultimately want, which is a feeling. But if I go straight to the what do I want to feel, I'm going to choose the thing that makes me feel alive, which makes me feel inspired. So with that commitment, it started in that moment. So what am I going to eat? What am I going to read? What am I going to do? What am I going to spend my time on? What am I going to think about? And every little decision I made compounded into a whole new path. I had no idea I didn't end up in this field, as a communication strategist and advisor and coach and keynote speaker. That was not, and it was inconceivable in 2008 that this would be happening back then. But just by simply following this life-giving feeling versus what sounds like a good idea, the path revealed itself. And so now this, I guess you could call it Amy 2.0, is the result or the culmination of one that follows inspiration, or as you say.
Yeah, I love it. Well, they're both higher center emotions, if you can call emotions. I mean, but I love it. And to your point, we're just not taught that. It's when we are in joy and in alignment and all of these things that magic happens, instead of the figuring out and the stressing and all the things. So now you work with teams, and I know you work a lot on communication and trust. And it's funny because you talk about in your story that all of your focus went from you to your son. And I know one of the things that you talk about is this spotlight shift.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you share what that is and how it works in people's lives and teams with shifting that focus?
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, it's the best way to describe this is that for each of us humans in each moment, we're always standing for something. In each moment, each of us has a primary underlying objective that is live in this moment, but we're just usually not aware of what it is. And it has to do with how our mind and brain and awareness works and how the nervous system can take over. There's a lot going on that I'll spare you the details. But in each moment, each of us has a primary underlying objective. We're just usually not aware. Right? So for an example, right now, you and I are in this conversation. Now, if I didn't know what I know about this stuff, right now, I might ultimately be standing for impressing you. Right? Or I might ultimately be standing for looking good or sounding smart, because I know that this is being recorded. Now, my noble self wouldn't necessarily think that. My noble self would think that I'm focused on having a conversation with you, but I might ultimately be standing for looking good in this conversation. I say that because in every moment, there is a primary underlying objective. There is a focus. There is a stance that we hold. We're just usually not aware. So over the decade in this work that I do, I've gotten really, really clear about how this underlying stance that each of us have completely determines the realities that we create for ourselves. It's not the world out there that's affecting it. It's my focus. And so that is usually one of the biggest eye openers for a lot of the leaders or teams that it's to help them see what you're living actually is not an effect of the system. It's an effect of your focus and your unacknowledged, unintentional focus that you don't even realize is happening. So I say this because this spotlight, when we start to wake up to this idea that, oh, wait, my joy, my thriving, my impact is going to be due to me harnessing this spotlight, this stance, and shifting it where it needs to be. Like right now, I'm in a conversation with you. Now, I could stand for sounding smart, but nobody really benefits from that. Now, why are we having this conversation in the first place? Well, I know for a fact, because I know you, Abby, we're about making the world a better place. We want to create resonance in human consciousness. We want to help facilitate the awakening of human consciousness for the sake of love and harmony and co-creative ability, where we can create integration with one another and harmonize and thrive. Like that's what we're about. Now, I'm standing for that. Let this conversation be in service of that, not me sounding good. Okay, so this is just a mini example of how in each moment, like our power, our joy, our impact, our freedom comes from harnessing this spotlight, essentially this stance. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the example that you use because it's exactly what I call sophisticated sleepwalking. We always have a motive. And I love the example that you use because I think it's really a human one, because we can slip in and out of those roles. Like, even though we can have all the intentions, right? But sometimes things will happen and we'll get starstruck, or our hyperachiever will come out, or we really want something. And it takes a practice to not let those impulses, which are, as you mentioned, condition, nervous system noise, egoic, not in a bad way, just in the way that our ego was formed to protect us,
That's right.
take over.
Yeah.
And so I really like the example because it happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the time. And so it's something to constantly be looking at. And I think a lot of times when people learn this, they can feel shame, like, oh, they're the only one, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, no, this is how we're all built. This is what
Yeah.
we're all doing. But what a great analogy to say, like, okay, well, let me shift the spotlight onto either the mission that
Mhm.
we're serving, the audience we're talking to, the person that we're talking to, any of those things. And it's such a simple visual thing.
Right.
Where's the spotlight? Oh, the spotlight's on me and what I look like. Let me move that over.
Right. Because I mean, the whole premise here in what I teach is the spotlight is never meant to be on self. It is the most ineffective place for a spotlight to be. In the same way that if you're driving a car and your headlights are shining back into the car, you're not going to get anywhere. If you're driving around and the headlights flip back into the car, shining inside on you, you're paralyzed. Right.
Yeah.
So you got to flip them out and shine it out. That way you can illuminate the path for you and all to see and to follow. That's progress. And so there's never a moment in life in which the spotlight's meant to be on self. And I'll tell you, Abby, it's really subtle. Right? There are so many roles we play in life. We can either be a parent, we can be a child, we can be a sibling, we can be a colleague, we can be a manager, we can be a neighbor. There's all these roles that we play, and it's very nuanced in how the spotlight it gets hijacked all the time, right? And so as a parent, I'll just share parenting, one of the hardest jobs on the planet, right? And you probably agree, probably one of the most important jobs on the planet, and it's probably one of the hardest. And if I'm in a disciplinary moment with one of my children, if I'm not careful, I might ultimately slip into standing for principle instead of standing
1,000%.
for their learning or their growth or their thriving. And it's not that I would intentionally choose to stand for principle. It just happens.
Well, it's all fear based, right? I mean,
Because that's the nervous system
want the
hijack.
best for them. We don't want them to fail. We don't want them to hurt. We don't want them
That's right.
to whatever. And sometimes it is even the fear comes in through the ego. It's like, well, I don't want them to make me look bad.
Honestly, or if I'm really honest with myself, I don't want to look back in life and regret that I did this wrong. I don't want to have regrets that I am a subpar parent.
And
So it does come back to self.
yeah, those sleepwalks, those particular uncovered motives are the worst, right? Because I can't tell you the amount of disastrous parenting decisions I've made when they've been made through that lens.
Oh, totally.
Through the lens of like, I don't want to be seen as a bad parent,
Right.
or I don't want to look back and think I did the wrong thing. And they have nothing to do with intuition or alignment or listening to some type of higher voice. It's all happening in the mind. It's all a logical decision. And every time it was like wrong, very, 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 very wrong. So yeah, no, I totally hear you. Yeah. So you talk a lot about help teams with communication, and I'd love to hear some of how this, because obviously to your point, there's so many roles that we play. So whether you are working with a team in communication, or we're coaching someone who is a parent or a spouse or all of the above, if the spotlight's not supposed to be on myself, then where does intuition come in? Where's alignment? I'll use your words. Where does alignment come in if I'm not? Because I think we're so trained to use our mind and our thinking logical brain to make our choices, which is not alignment. But we're also saying, okay, but the focus isn't supposed to be on me. So it's kind of a beautiful dance, actually, but I'm eager to hear how you describe it. So what happens when you're teaching people communication?
Well, so maybe it starts there. Yeah, because I would say communications is an aspect of something. It's a predominant focal point that might be an entry point for a lot of the teams I work with. It's an area of expertise, but I wouldn't say I'm a soul. It's all about communication. That's a huge piece of it. Really, this is about how do we provide more value in the world? How do we create more thriving and more value? And so when you look at organizations, they're made up of teams. When you look at teams, they're made up of individuals. Like all of these things exist in theory to help create value for the world, for the world at large, for humanity, in theory. And so that is what I'm interested in. How do we do that? Right? Because we don't do it in a vacuum. Nobody is creating in a vacuum. I mean, there might be some people living in caves off elsewhere, but the world in which you and I live in, and we're all in relationship with one another, and we're doing things with one another, and we're creating together. We co-create. How do we optimize that? How do we come together to produce and to be high value creating for humanity, for ourselves, for life, for the planet at large. So when you think about it that way, naturally the focus is, well, what's the big vision? What is thriving? What's this about? And so rather than this be about my success, this is about what is our success? What is it that we're really here to do? And so shifting that spotlight becomes the natural function of going from being I-centric to we-centric. Right. And I find that when we are genuinely going through this process to be of service, to be in service, then we tend to drop more into our intuition. Because why? Because if I'm in service, I'm recognizing that I'm connected with others, that there's this interconnection between all living life. Why else would I be of service? And so if I'm connected into that, then it's easier to be a vessel or a conduit for this deeper wisdom to emerge. It's harder to do when we're in an I-centric stance, right? Because we're cut off from this interconnected web that's really true.
Yeah, we're so separate. And that is the beautiful dance, right? It's like, okay, so I take the spotlight off of me. I think I'm following you. Take the spotlight off of me, put it on being in service, and automatically, when we are being in service, we're connecting to something that's greater than ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Not just other people, but something that's greater than ourselves and other people and our oneness and our wholeness. And then we're automatically more aligned and in tune with what is right for us. Because I believe, like, and I know not everybody believes this, but I really do believe that at our core, that is what we all want to do. We want to be of service. Like generally people get involved in things because they are passionate about them. They may get burnt out or forget why they did it to start, but they started because they had an inspiration and a passion for what that was. And it wasn't like, I don't think anybody starts a business from the very beginning is like, oh, I just want to be the best. I just want to have a lot of money. I want to, if they do that business, as we know from research, doesn't do that well because that's a low level motivation. That's a low vibration motivation. Most people, and certainly the very successful businesses, flourish from this, like, I really want to bring this into the world.
You know, it's interesting that you say this. I had to really test myself on these things because I read a article on I was a new scientist. It was an evolutionary biologist, and essentially it was the evolutionary science of deceit and exploitation. And it was fascinating to me because it just, what you just said right there, like my heart says, yes, that's absolutely true. But what I had read in this article was like, actually, that's not true. And so then, and I was like, oh, I have to read this. I have to dive in to really inform myself because otherwise, anyway, it's always so painful when you have to confront science that tells you the opposite of what you want to believe, right? But I'm like, I have to do it. I have to dive in deep. But I think it's worth mentioning because we look out in the world and there are a lot of individuals that are self-motivated that are seemingly affluent and successful, and it's like, well, how is that the case? But when it comes to biology and evolution, seed and exploitation is a natural part of how we have to operate, especially out in the wild. It's just with humans, it's interesting because once we get past Dunbar's number, we have the ability to hide our intention, which isn't true in the wild, right? Yeah. And so I'm thinking of this one particular scientist. His book was called Invisible Rivals, right? And so like with humans, we can be invisible rivals and we can hide these things. Anyway, it's just, this is kind of a sidebar that's worth mentioning, but it's trying to hold these truths and witness what we're witnessing when it's all seemingly contradictory. It's a lot right now, but yeah.
It is a lot right now, but I love the way you put that. Like, it's true. We can hide that. It's kind of interesting because in a way, like the way that I think about this work, it's the spotlight needs to be on you because the way I talk about it is like, this is a deep self-study because we have to be able to be aware of the places inside ourselves. It's really easy to say, oh yeah, that's a bad actor. That person doesn't, there's plenty of that going on now. Like people will say, oh, this person is bad and they don't have, good motives or whatever. And it's like a total in totality. It's like all good, all bad. Is kind of what we're living in today. And to me, the nervous system and the human mammal machine is so complicated that it actually takes a lot of focus on self to be able to catch ourselves, just like in your parenting example of when we're veering off course.
Yeah, I would say that this is really about, it's not so much putting the spotlight on self, because really what you're seeking to do is put the spotlight on understanding, on spotlight on the sake of coming together for the sake of truly of understanding and empathy, perspective, right?
Yeah.
Why? Right. Why? Because, there's a lot more going on here than we're probably realizing. And so through my spotlight being on understanding for the sake of coming together to create harmony, I am now able to be self-reflective, have humility, and recognize that I'm probably holding biases and running narratives that aren't in service of real truth. So so I'm not disagreeing, but I'm also saying, actually, consistent with the framework here, the spotlight still necessarily has to be off self to have that capability to be self-reflective, to have humility.
Yeah, it's kind of like different door to the same place. But I'm curious to know, what are some things that you really help teams with and you help people with, that because so many times I know that like people are listening and they're thinking, yeah, but this issue that's going on at home or at work, or like, how do I apply this idea to what's happening, because communication is all haywire or just doesn't seem possible. Because that's another thing that we do too in our humanity. It's like, yeah, that sounds good, except this, that sounds like it would apply everywhere except to what I'm dealing with, because this is too big. It's like that focus shift that you were talking about. We can't see it when we're in it. So give us some examples of what you're talking about.
I mean, really what it comes down to answer the question that you had asked, like, what is it that, I'm really focusing on? I would say right now in this day and age, it's bridging divides. It's helping people enter into constructive conflict, constructive dialogue. There are so many differing points of view, and necessarily so, and there's nothing wrong with that. But how can we co-create together where we can hold differing perspectives and be constructive in our ability to discuss and again, co-create together? And that's really what this is all in service of. It's, whether it's teams, whether it's families, whether it's organizations, whether it's movements or initiatives, it's how can we bring all of these perspectives together and cooperate in such a way that we can be of service to the thing that we do agree on? Because at the end of the day, there's probably more we agree on than we don't, but we're focused on being right more than we're focused on being in harmony, right? And so I think what's getting in the way for a lot of initiatives or just individuals in general, we're unintentionally standing for being right, than standing for realizing a vision or standing for realizing success together. There's neuroscience behind this, because did you know every time you're validated as right, you get a surge of dopamine, and that's really pleasurable. And so if we're not fully awake, we will unintentionally and inadvertently go back for that rightness hit. And that's why we can get into such big fights and fight for our rightness at forsaking the thing that we're actually like. I'm just thinking about, my husband and I don't do this so much, but it's a fairly universal example. If my husband and I enter into a tiff and it gets pretty heated, I'm going to unintentionally be standing for winning, because if he saw it my way, we'd be in harmony, right? And so as we fight for rightness, really, but we're doing this because we're in a tiff, because really what we're trying to seek here is this sense of harmony and collective unity, right? But it's funny because rightness flies in the face.
I interviewed someone I talk about a lot on this show called named Red Hawk, and I went to a retreat of his a few months ago. Anyway, as part of it, he was teaching this thing, and he was talking about how he and his wife have this practice of begin again. And so whenever there's a tiff or something, they immediately, one of them says, "Can we begin again?" And they have to touch or hold hands. And if it was a not a huge egregious thing, they might hug or something or whatever. And I said, I think that would work with me and my husband if whoever says begin again first wins.
That's funny.
I know, because that's how the mind is, right? Like
It all comes back to winning.
Yeah, exactly. And we've had like one time we have gone to like 0 to 60, and literally like 5 seconds later, we'll both just burst out laughing, because it's like, oh my God, we were just totally ridiculously hijacked. But to your point, right? Like whether you're in a relationship or a work situation, there's a joint purpose. But we get so hung up on whether we're right or whether we're winning or how we look or all these things that really have nothing to do with our essence or who we are, or how we even want to show up in the world.
Right.
That keep us from seeing that higher goal. And I love that that's your focus. And I think that's a lot of what we connected on as well, is this idea of like, my God, like we're so divided right now. And can we see the humanity? Like, if nothing else, can we see the humanity? And I'm wondering, like, what's a little micro practice? Like, I'm thinking of the person right now who might be listening. And let's say, politics obviously is right now like a huge thing, right? And so there's so many people out there that are either on one side or another and just saying, I just cannot handle this, that, the other. I mean, for how many years now since pre-COVID, it's literally breaking families and friendships and marriages apart. And so for the person who, whether it's political or whether it's something that's happening at work, what's a micro practice that they could practice right now that might help release the hold that is on them around this? Like, you're being right. I'm right. Like, your mind is telling you you're right. You know, like there's nothing to discuss. I'm right. But how do they get out of that and into?
Well, let's try this. Maybe something I'll offer here kind of maps back to how we tap into intuition as well. I have a quote that might kick the answer off here. And the quote is, "The chief source of failure is choosing what you want in the moment over what you really want." I like this quote because it really speaks to the multiple layers of desire, which also is parallel to what we're talking about here, these multiple layers of focus. And like, essentially, it's like, how far out is that spotlight? And that's how I see this. In a moment when we're feeling tension, I'm going to guarantee you it's because the spotlight is too close to self, right? In the same way, I'm going to be feeling tension in my car if my headlights are in my car. It's just, to the degree that I feel tense and anxious and angry and frustrated is to the degree that the spotlight is close to me. So I have to use my feeling as a guide to see, like, what am I actually focusing on? So I have to let that be the indicator that, oh, maybe I'm focused on the wrong thing. Right. And so there has to be a part of us inside that says, there's something here I actually really want that I'm not focused on. So if I'm fed up, if I'm this, I'm that, I'm frustrated, I'm done, it's likely because I'm focusing more on my perspective and my rightness and my. And so the question is, well, what do I actually really want to feel in this moment right now with you, or in this? It's like, I want to feel peace. I want to feel possibility. I want to feel harmony. Now, just allowing myself to put the spotlight on something that is out in the horizon, I would like to believe we could all want to mobilize around, is going to open up cognitive bandwidth for me to have new inspired ideas on what to think differently, what to do differently, and maybe even have a bit more energy to act differently. But it starts with shifting our focus. It's kind of like if you sit down to watch TV and it's the end of the day and you're tired and you turn on the TV and up pops a horror film. And you're like, "Ugh," and like the last thing you want to see is this chainsaw massacring this. And it's like, "Ugh." What do? You change to a different show. Back in the day, we had cable, right? So it was like you would change the channel. We don't say that anymore. We say we change to something else. We switch, whatever.
Like, it's not a clicker, it's a remote.
Yeah,
exactly. Where's the clicker?
Right. And so we change a channel. And so, like, what might we change it to? Oh, I'm going to change it to the Great Baking Show, or I'm going to change it to Planet Earth. I'm going to change it to, why? Because if I change it to something and I'm literally focusing on something different, it makes me feel different. So I'm going to focus on the thing that I actually want, which is what? Harmony, joy, peace, connection, thriving. Yeah. And see what happens.
Okay, but here's what I really love about what you said, because I think a lot of times, particularly people that are sort of really into this work and are like, oh, you just have to change your focus. You just have to change your thoughts. Oh, just be joy. That's all we're thinking. But it's not that easy, right? As we know. But what I love, what you pull together, is you said, if you are in that space, it is undeniable then that the spotlight is too close to your face. And so that means that we are too self-involved in that moment. We are too focused on self.
Yeah.
And that to me is the key to that practice, because if I can remember that I am too focused on myself right now, and that is why I feel the way that I feel.
Bingo.
Nobody wants to be focused on self. Nobody wants to be self-centered or self-involved. Like nobody,
In
particularly
theory, no, nobody, I mean, that's not a noble thing to.
it's not noble, right? And particularly women, it's like, oh my God, that's the worst thing ever. Tell a woman that she's self-centered. It's like, oh my God, she might
You're
as well
right.
have a scarlet letter on her head. I always say the scarlet letter really is selfishness. That's like the worst thing that a woman could ever
That's
be.
funny. Yeah.
And so that's sort of the moment that it's like, let me come out of my reverie. That is why when I'm working one-on-one with, women in big positions and stuff that are getting like that, I will say, because it helped me so much.
Yeah.
That's a self-important stance.
Yeah.
That's really self-centered, and I'll explain, not saying that like as an insult. I'm saying that to like, let's just break this down and think about this. And that sometimes can be the motivation to step out of self and be like, well, wait a minute, I don't want to be that. So let me break this down for a moment. Let me pull the spotlight away from me.
Right. And all this hinges on just, it's deciding that, one, I care about how I feel. Why? Because how I feel is everything. Why? Because everything I want is for a feeling anyway. And at the end of the day, I'm of firm belief that most humans want to feel good. They want to feel free. They want to feel peace. They want to feel significance and meaning and joy. I believe that. Okay, so if what I feel is the most important thing, then noticing how I feel in a moment is fundamental, because how I feel in a moment is everything. And so now the question is, well, in this moment, am I feeling the way I want to feel? And if I'm feeling tight, angry, resentful, frustrated, indignant, like all of those, now, like, okay, I've just noticed I'm below the neutral line in emotion. Like there's a positive emotion, negative emotion. So below the neutral line, negative. I'm in negative emotion. Okay, I'm there. Now I can choose to be there. The question is this working for me? Stay there as long as you want. It's up to you. Really what this comes down to is this working for me? And for those of us that are listening, chances are you do care about how you feel and you want to be above the neutral line. And so there's going to be plenty of times in life I'm below the neutral line. And you know what? I want to be there. And I'm going to pull out a glass of wine. I'm going to listen to Sarah McLachlan and I'm going to eat chocolate. And that's just what I'm going to do. And fine. So like I have to have agency here. And I'm not saying that's all about toxic positivity, but there's going to be a point where it's like, this resentment is not working for me. This frustration, this anger is not working for me. Okay. Why? You know what? I'm standing for being right. I'm standing for looking good. I'm standing for whatever, but the spotlight is close on self. Okay, well, here's the great news. You and you alone are the only person can shift your spotlight. The world doesn't do it. You have to do it. And that is the most freeing, most liberating thing to know. Totally up to me. But then that's the bad news. It's totally up to you. You can't blame anybody else. And so the double-edged sword of real liberation, it's like, it really is up to you. But what do you gain? True freedom, true joy, true.
Yeah, but so what do you say to the person who says, well, but it's not up to me. I just need them to act differently. I just need them to do something.
Well, then I would say we need to have a whole session on like radical accountability. And by saying it's not up to me, essentially I'm making myself a victim to the system. And while I say that there's a lot of stuff out there, but I don't want to be a victim of the system. I'm not going to give my power away to the world out there and saying, you're the reason I feel this way.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it's such another beautiful little nugget of a paradigm shift of like realizing that when we're in that space, we're giving our power away. I always say this because, if you look, I've actually done this. I looked in the dictionary. Have you ever looked up what empowerment is defined as? This makes me crazy. Empowerment in the dictionary is literally defined as having someone bestow you with power. And I always say, empowerment is not bestowed, it's generated.
I like
someone
that.
cannot give you empowerment. Like if I'm talking to someone or someone is completely disempowered and just in this horrible, I'm a terrible person, I'm horrible, you can sit there and be like, oh no, you're so great, everybody loves you, blah, 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 to all, you're so brilliant, to all you want. And if that person is in that place, there's nothing you can say and do to give them
right
a feeling of empowerment. It has to come from you. It has to be, to your point, the only one that can change that about it is you. And so it's another great little nugget to be like, okay, well, is the spotlight too close to me? If I'm in a snit, the spotlight is too close to me. I'm too focused on self. And I am the only one to get myself out of this. And if I believe anything otherwise, then I've basically given my power away. Another thing that nobody really wants to do.
No, right. And that's such such an eye-opening realization when you realize, like, because blame can feel so good.
Yes.
Because on the surface, it's easy to believe that blame is empowering, right? Because it's like, well, I'm relinquishing my responsibility, saying that you're the reason, and so I have. But it's the complete opposite. The moment we blame, we've literally given our power away to that thing we're blaming. We're saying, okay, well, you're in charge. Right. And so to see how that habit of blame keeps us below the neutral line is so eye-opening, because on the surface level, the habit of blame is perpetuated with this idea that it actually gives me above the neutral line, when it does the exact opposite.
Yes.
The exact opposite. And when you see it clearly and you decide, okay, well, how I feel is the most important thing, I'm going to stop blaming. It doesn't mean I'm going to become a mediocre, like I'm going to tolerate mediocrity and I'm going to become a doormat and I'm just going to like roll over and play dead and let the world be the world. No, 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 no. I'm seeing soberly what's true, and I'm retaining my power so I can act in service of a vision that I choose to put my spotlight on.
And I have agency. It's reminding me of, I was listening to Ellen Langer on a podcast, and she's like Ellen Langer, the mother of mindfulness. God, it was so fascinating. She said, I don't understand forgiveness, like why people have to talk about forgiveness. If I understand why you did what you did, like I get it, explain to me, and I essentially put myself in that person's shoes, and I understand from their perspective why they did what they did. I don't have to forgive them. I don't have to blame them. It might not be what I chose. It might not be what I want, but I understand. So there is no reason to forgive in that standpoint, because I don't blame them, because I'm in their shoes now. I'm looking at the way that they're looking at it, and I understand.
Mm.
And kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about like understanding
where
someone is coming from, as opposed to like having that be the goal instead of getting my point across, which I know I'm victim of as well. It's just like, I just need you to understand. And everybody's like, no, wait a minute. No, maybe I need to understand. Maybe I need to stop and understand here. So I know you work a lot with teams and executives and whatnot. And one of these things that I noticed that I'm curious about you is that there's often like in people's minds, there's a compartmentalization, which I have never seen. And so like my executive coaching it's really intertwined, because to me, we can work, I don't care, we can work on your marriage and it's going to make your leadership better. We can work on your leadership and it'll make your parenting better or your marriage better. But people seem to compartmentalize personal growth and career success. And so I was just wondering, like, what do you see in that genre, and what's your feeling on that?
Well,
we're talking a lot about a lot of personal stuff.
Yeah, no, I would say, 100%, there are no lines drawn when it comes to any of this work. You could call it executive coaching, you could call it advising, you could call it therapy, you could call it, it's, I always tell people, I'm like, look, the common denominator is you. It runs through all these buckets you're talking about, whether it's your marriage, it's your parenting, it's your business, it's your, your investors, your board. The common denominator is you. So like all's on the table when it comes to this work. Yeah.
I love it. So what is one thing that if you wish that you could just shake people and just say, like, I just want you to know this one thing. What is the one thing that you would really like people to know?
It's funny. I think about this often in my meditation. Not in exactly through this framing, and it tends to shift, like what the focus is, or at least where my focus is at the moment. And I think just God, I would have answered this differently maybe 2 months ago, but right now in this present moment, like literally it's 12:14 December 2nd, 12:14 Pacific. I would say that us humans worldwide have so much more in common than we recognize. And we all very much want the same thing. And if we were to just focus on that deep knowing, I think harmony could be a bit more of a reality. That feels really ripe at the moment, is that we're so much more alike than we are different. And underneath that, our ability to recognize that really hinges on our decision to know that we're already whole and complete and worthy and deserving and enough. And so maybe that's what I would have said 2 months ago, but they tie together.
Okay. All right. I was going to say, why would it be different 2 months ago? But
Yeah, well, I mean, so like it just feels relevant that, there's just, yeah.
yeah. No, it's so true. Like we're just in such a moment. What is your
Mhm.
belief about that moment, by the way? Like, what do you believe this division is really about? Does it get you down?
What's interesting, my immediate reality doesn't experience it. It's the concept of it. It's the news of it. It's the constant barrage of information that's coming through, whether I like it or not. Even though my notifications are off, Abby,
I know,
I'm
I
still
know.
getting bombarded by this stuff, right? But
People are saying things to me. I'm
I
like,
know, and I'm like, gosh, and if I mean, case in point, we're talking about it right
right.
now. But like, if I were to be really honest, like my day-to-day reality is beautiful, right? There is no division. But philosophically, if I zoom out and then just say, well, do you have thoughts about kind of the climate and what it is we're hearing about and what it is what we're seeing and what we are witnessing on the news? And I don't know, philosophically, I know I can't know who I am unless I know who I'm not. I can't know what I like unless I know what I don't like. We live in a world of duality. As there is birth, there is death. As there is light, there is dark. The only reason there's up is because there's a concept of down. And so, for us to have a vision state of what we want, we also have to know what it is we don't want. And so, I would say, on a spiritual maybe level, we go through these periods of, let's call it contrast, in order to define for ourselves what really is most important. Because without that contrast, could I even conceive of a vision of what's wanted? I don't know. And so to be in a moment that feels fragile like this, or I don't even know how to describe it, to meet it with the least amount of resistance I can imagine, like possibly do, I have to philosophically consider that nothing is permanent. We're always in a state of changing. I do believe that we are growing all the time, whether we like the direction of growth or not, I don't know, but we're growing. And so we're experiencing contrast in order to be able to define for ourselves the way we actually value what we want and how we're going to focus. Because to me, that's where our real power is.
That so much.
Mm.
So, Amy, where can people find you? What would you like to draw people's attention to?
Yeah. So, not long ago, I recently relaunched a whole new brand. Well, not brand, but anyway, amyalisawong.com. We've got a lot of information there, my website. And then I hang out on LinkedIn, Amy Elisa Wong. You can find me there. That's pretty much where I'm at these days. And just starting to write more articles on Substack. But at the moment, I would say, yeah, I'd say my website and LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. It was really fun finally getting to do this.
So fun. I just adore you, Abby. Thank you for the time. This is so fun.